Congressional Capitals, Part 8. The United States Continental Congress returns to Independence Hall. After 3 weeks at College Hall, Congress returned on July 20th, 1778, to the restored Pennsylvania State House. Vandalized during the British occupation, it was once again fit to serve as the nation's capital. That December, President Henry Laurens resigned, worn down by financial ruin, family illness, and frustration over the lack of French aid. Into this breach stepped John Jay, elected president on December 10, 1778. Jay had already proven an indispensable delegate. He was the author of the 1774 Address to the People of Great Britain. He co-drafted the 1775 Olive Branch Petition and was the framer of Congress's first instructions to Commander-in-Chief George Washington in 1776. In New York, Jay played a decisive role in uniting a divided state behind independence, securing its formal adoption of the Declaration on July 9, 1776. His stature as a principled lawyer and adept diplomat soon positioned him as the natural choice to steady the U.S. Continental Congress in 1778. In 1779, Continental Congress President John Jay faced a storm of crises. The continental currency had begun its rapid collapse into near worthlessness, leaving the army unpaid and undersupplied. British victories in the South and brutal frontier raids by the Iroquois allies threatened to unravel the war effort. Congress itself was paralyzed by factionalism, with the states defying requisitions and delegates divided over strategy and leadership. At the same time, foreign alliances proved difficult to manage. France pursued its own priorities while Spain entered the war without recognizing U.S. independence, forcing Jay to balance diplomacy with desperation for loans. His presidency was less about bold victories than about holding the fragile Union together, preserving Congress's authority, and buying time for the revolution to survive. On September 28, 1779, Congress appointed John Jay minister to France and elected Samuel Huntington president. A farmer's son from Connecticut and a self-taught lawyer, Huntington was no orator, but his humility and steadiness proved invaluable. Respected across factions and rarely making enemies, he shouldered the thankless task of guiding a divided Congress through very bleak years of the Revolution. By 1780, the Revolution had reached its lowest point. On May the 12th, Charleston fell in the greatest American surrender of the war, and just 3 months later, on August the 16th, General Horatio Gates, the so-called hero of Saratoga, saw his army shattered in defeat at Camden. Meanwhile, Congress was staring into financial ruin. Back in 1775, the brand new Continental dollar carried the same weight as the trusted Spanish silver dollar. But by the spring of 1780, the currency had collapsed. So worthless, in some states it took nearly 70 Continentals to equal a single piece of silver. In March 1780, Congress ceased printing the dollar and ordered a new issue at 40-1. But these weren't federal notes. Each state printed its own bills at the new exchange rate, merely guaranteed by Congress. The plan collapsed almost at once, and a bitter phrase entered American speech: not worth a Continental. Even the United States Lottery, launched in 1776 to fund the Revolution, collapsed during this session. With both currency and the lottery in ruins, the U.S. Continental Congress's financial experiments clearly had failed, leaving the Army dependent on requisitions and foreign loans. On September 3, 1780, former President of Congress Henry Laurens was captured at sea by the British while sailing to Holland on a loan mission. Imprisoned in the Tower of London, he became the only American held there during the Revolution. That same month, news broke of General Benedict Arnold's treason, a shocking betrayal that nearly handed West Point to the enemy. In early 1781, the crisis only worsened. On January 5th, the Pennsylvania line mutinied, the largest uprising in the Continental Army, driven by unpaid wages and worthless currency. Commander-in-Chief Washington, with the Continental Congress at his back, acted quickly to suppress the revolt while preserving the Army's fragile unity. The tide, however, began to turn. The Patriot militia crushed Loyalists at Kings Mountain, and on January 17, 1781, Daniel Morgan's troops won a brilliant victory at Cowpens, restoring American morale and forcing the British onto the defensive. While inside the Pennsylvania State House, Congress hit its key institutional milestones. On February 2, 1781, Maryland, the last state to do so, finally ratified the Articles of Confederation. On February 7th, Congress created 3 executive departments: War, Marine, and Finance. This legislation established the Department of War and the Office of Secretary of War, transferring authority from the old Board of War, which had functioned since 1777. On February 12th, Congress formally received Maryland's ratification. With all 13 states now in agreement, it appointed Robert Morse Superintendent of Finance on February 20th and resolved on February 22nd that the new Constitution would take effect on March 1st, 1781. Morse reforms under the Articles, including the Bank of North America, laid the foundation for modern executive departments and restored confidence in the nation's finances. This 3-year session, the longest of the colonial and U.S. Continental Congresses, saw treason, mutiny, battlefield disaster, financial collapse, the death of foreign allies, and the capture of American leaders. Even the nation's own currency and national lottery had collapsed. Yet through it all, Congress held the fragile Union together. By preserving national unity in these bleak years of the Revolution, it carried the United States to the brink of an eventual victory. From the meeting rooms of Philadelphia's Carpenter's Hall in 1774 to New York's Federal Hall in 1790, 11 historic buildings served as seats of America's Continental, Confederation, and bicameral Congresses. To celebrate the 250th birthday of the United States of America, we created a richly illustrated 2026 calendar, which presents the architectural, political, and cultural history of each of the 11 congressional capitals, where the foundations of the United States were laid. Each month, the calendar features a full-color depiction of one of the congressional capitals, an architectural and historic profile of the building, the political context and key legislation enacted within its walls, daily notations of the pivotal U.S. founding events tied to their actual anniversaries. Far more than a calendar, this is a portable historical exhibit bringing together forgotten capitals, overlooked debates, and legislative milestones that transformed a group of colonies into a functioning republic. Perfect for the historians, educators, students, and all who wish to follow the nation's path from independence to the Constitution, month by month. To order, visit www.historic.us/CAPITOLS.